Welcome to this explainer. We're going to dive right into SpaceX's massive S1 prospectus to unpack the actual nuts and bolts business mechanics behind their sci-fi ambitions. We are looking at a document here that stretches over 200 pages, and it details an unprecedented corporate structure following their integration with xAI in early 2026. Make no mistake, this isn't just a rocket company anymore. It's a vertically integrated empire attempting to build the literal infrastructure of the future.
The filing kicks off with a quote from Elon Musk. He says, "You want to wake up in the morning and think the future is going to be great, and I can't think of anything more exciting than going out there and being among the stars." That visionary statement really sets the tone for the entire document, reminding us that, at its core, this company is trying to make life multiplanetary. It's a bold, existential mission, right? But what makes this specific S1 so fascinating is exactly how SpaceX plans to turn that cosmic ambition into a sustainable, cash-generating business model down here on Earth and eventually up in orbit.
Because this is such a dense document, we've structured our explainer into 5 key sections. First, the ultimate IPO. Second, 3 pillars of the future. Third, the financial engine. Fourth, building orbital AI. And finally, part 5, risks, realities, and control.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the ultimate IPO, and their $28.5 trillion vision.
SpaceX is projecting a total addressable market of $28.5 trillion. Yes, that is trillion with a T. To put that completely wild number into perspective, that is literally larger than the GDP of the United States. Let's break those numbers down for a second. The space sector, so everything from launch services to space-enabled solutions, represents about $370 billion. Connectivity, which is driven by their Starlink network and already boasts over 10 million subscribers, represents a $1.6 trillion opportunity. But then look at the AI slice. AI represents a staggering $26.5 trillion of their target market. According to the filing, this covers AI infrastructure, consumer subscriptions, digital advertising, and enterprise applications. This completely redefines SpaceX. They are pivoting from a legacy aerospace company into a foundational technology provider for the AI era.
Moving right along to Section 2, 3 pillars of the future, or what is essentially their interconnected empire.
You see, SpaceX isn't just 3 separate businesses operating in silos. It's an inescapable technological loop. Space launches Starlink, Starlink connects AI, and AI will eventually rely on space-based power. According to the S1, this entire ecosystem was locked into place when SpaceX acquired xAI in February of 2026. The space pillar provides unparalleled launch capabilities. I mean, they've launched over 80% of the world's mass to orbit since 2023. That dominance enables the connectivity pillar, allowing them to deploy roughly 9,600 Starlink satellites to build out a global low-latency network. And then, that network serves as the distribution and data foundation for the AI pillar, featuring their truth-seeking Grok frontier model and the X platform. It's brilliant, really. Each segment reinforces and actually accelerates the capabilities of the others.
So how do they actually pull this all off? The crucial point behind building this empire is their engineering philosophy, known internally as the algorithm. This is what allows them to relentlessly drive down costs and innovate way faster than the rest of the industry. The S1 explicitly details this 5-step iterative process totally rooted in first principles thinking. And I absolutely love step 1 here. Make requirements less dumb. It's just such a brutally honest starting point. By refusing to accept industry norms, like the old historical belief that rockets had to be expendable, they force extreme vertical integration. They don't just optimize a process, they actively delete unnecessary parts of it before they ever even try to automate it. This exact framework is exactly what allowed them to build their gigawatt-scale Colossus AI training clusters in just a fraction of the time it usually takes everyone else.
That brings us to Section 3, the financial engine. Because, as you can imagine, funding the infrastructure of the future is incredibly expensive.
When you look at their AI capital expenditures, the growth is absolutely explosive. They burned through $7.7 billion in just the first quarter of 2026 to build out their gigawatt-scale supercomputers. Notice the trajectory they're on here. Back in 2024, they spent $5.6 billion on AI capex. By 2025, that more than doubled to $12.7 billion. And to already hit $7.7 billion in just the first 3 months of 2026, that shows an incredibly aggressive push to scale their AI compute capacity. They are literally racing to secure physical infrastructure, processors, and power, clearly asserting in the S1 that the future of AI is going to be determined by whoever controls this physical stack.
Now, you might be wondering, how on earth do they afford this staggering burn rate? Well, the reality is that their established space and connectivity segments are the proven financial engines creating the massive cash flow they need to keep these new AI ambitions afloat. Just looking at the 3 months ended March 31, 2026, the company generated $4.69 billion in consolidated revenue. The connectivity segment alone, driven completely by Starlink, brought in over $3.2 billion of that, alongside massive adjusted EBITDA margins. This perfectly encapsulates the whole business model. Use the cash generated from their globally established internet and launch monopolies to aggressively fund their nascent, super capital-intensive AI segment, which perfectly sets up Section 4, Building Orbital AI, and how they plan on solving the terrestrial power problem.
Here's the situation. Down here on Earth, our power grids are facing severe energy constraints. But in orbit, there is limitless, continuous solar energy. The S1 notes that U.S. electricity generation basically flatlined for 15 years, growing at a mere 0.1% annually until very recently. Terrestrial AI compute is fundamentally constrained by how much power we can physically generate down here. But, as the prospectus quickly points out, the Sun contains roughly 99.8% of the solar system's energy. By moving AI inference workloads into space, SpaceX bypasses our terrestrial power grid entirely. They can utilize continuous solar illumination and the natural passive cooling environment of space to achieve what they believe will eventually be a much lower cost per AI token. I know, servers in space sounds bizarre at first, but logically, it actually makes a ton of sense.
So, what does the timeline for this look like practically? To make this happen, they are targeting 2028 to begin deploying these orbital AI compute satellites. But, and this is a big but, this initiative is completely dependent on scaling their Starship launch vehicle. Starship is both the bottleneck and the enabler for this entire roadmap. In the second half of 2026, they plan to use Starship to deploy their massive V3 broadband satellites. By 2027, the aim is to launch V2 mobile satellites. Only with the unprecedented payload capacity and rapid reusability of Starship can they realistically begin launching the thousands of orbital AI compute satellites they're projecting for 2028. It's a highly sequential and incredibly ambitious execution plan.
All right, let's get into our final part, Section 5, Risks, Realities, and Control. Because as with any S1 filing, we have to neutrally examine the vulnerabilities that could bring it all crashing down.
10. Now, that is not a launch countdown. That single number actually represents the voting power ratio attached to Elon Musk's Class B shares. To put this neutrally, straight from the S1, this corporate governance structure means Musk has absolute control over the board and all significant corporate decisions. This makes SpaceX a controlled company. For every 1 vote a Class A public shareholder gets, Musk's Class B shares get 10 votes. Furthermore, the charter explicitly grants the holders of Class B stock the right to elect a majority of the board of directors. So, as a prospective investor, the key takeaway here is that your ability to influence corporate matters or even elect directors is completely precluded by this dual-class structure. You are placing absolute trust in the singular direction of the founder.
Aside from who's in control, the physical and regulatory realities present massive operational risks. We're talking everything from Starship development bottlenecks to the very real threat of space debris destroying their satellite constellations. The S1 doesn't mince words. If Starship fails to scale, the entire roadmap for V3 satellites, satellite-to-mobile, and orbital AI compute completely stalls out. Plus, with nearly 9,600 satellites in low Earth orbit, a major collision event could trigger cascading space debris, the Kessler syndrome, which would render entire orbits completely unusable for extended periods. Add to that their intense reliance on FCC spectrum authorizations to legally operate Starlink, and the stark reality that markets like asteroid mining, lunar energy production, and orbital AI compute quite simply do not exist yet.
Which leaves us with one final profound thought to consider today as SpaceX attempts to literally build the new railroads, internet networks, and power grids of the space age. Is this the blueprint for a multiplanetary, artificially intelligent civilization, or is the scale of technical and financial execution simply too vast for any single company to achieve? The S1 makes their stance clear. They are accepting only the laws of physics as their limit. I highly encourage you to read through the source material yourself to fully grasp the sheer scale of what is being attempted here. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.